This episode is sponsored by Hero Schedule. If your department needs better scheduling software that isn't outdated, clunky, and expensive, Hero Schedule is an easy switch. It's $4 per user per month, and they give you a free 30-day trial. Get started at heroschedule.com and click on Try Hero Schedule. Law enforcement and government agencies struggle with parking citations, often because no one will pay them. Boots or other devices are costly, and they invite confrontation when implied and later removed by enforcing employees. With Tire Tag, you can avoid many hurdles and ultimately promote public safety and revenue collection. To learn more, visit tiretag.com. Welcome to Blue Grit Radio, the podcast that explores making better cops for a better community. I'm your host, Eric Tung. I've been an active police officer since 2007. We will dive into the aspects of police culture, health and wellness, leadership, and mindset. You'll hear from experts not only from policing, but all industries as they relate to being our best with purpose, passion, and positivity. Join me as we share stories, lessons, and advice so we can all be better for ourselves, our teams, our families, and our communities. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Blue Grit Radio. This is your host, Eric. Today I'm joined by Kenny Dean. Kenny D from Let's Talk LE. Let's Talk Law Enforcement, period. So, Kenny, thanks for coming on the show, man.
Hey, I appreciate the invite.
Yeah, absolutely. So I found your page not super long ago. So although it feels like a lot of weeks of back and forth and trying to navigate time zones and scheduling, that's what happens with, active law enforcement or first responders that are doing that. And then what I like to call like an optional other part-time job in this content and trying to put helpful information out. But yeah, man, I really appreciate it. I just hopped off your show recording on hiring, right? There's a lot of folks that engage with you and your page on just trying to figure out like where they're going wrong. And so little shout out to those agencies, recruiters, background investigators, administrators. Like if you're not giving people some constructive advice and some feedback as to why they got DQ'd, like please reconsider that, because there's a lot of good folks out there working hard, and they might be perfect in literally like a year or two or whatever if you just gave them a little bit of insight so they don't just give up, because we got a staffing problem. Weird. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Man, thanks for having me on. So my page was started, believe it or not, a couple of years ago. Just what it was something I was watching, and the reporter was one of them things where we know what happened on the scene.
Yep.
But the reporters and the media get there and it's like, no, the officers did this, and you're sitting there like, that's not what happened.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's not what happened, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it was this whole thing of the media to me always kind of had bias, with the officers, right?
Yeah.
And they never go to a person that's really going to tell them what really happened, because that doesn't sell papers, that doesn't sell advertising, right? So we got to make it gritty and just sensationalism for people that may, in passing they see on the news, social media. Police officer kills black man. Wait, but did you say that black man had a gun? And they'll miss that part, because if it's unarmed, they throw that part in there.
Just a random guy.
Right. They throw that in there. So something said, you know what? I'm going to put out there what really happens on shootings and stuff like that. Because I've been involved in a few on duty and, a couple fatal. So the process, as you know, is not a very pleasant process to go through as a police officer. Mm-hmm. People think that the news is real. People think that TV is real. Like you go shoot 13, you look at them on the ground, go to the bar. You leave them on the ground, you go to the bar and get a drink with your buddy. It's like, rough night. It doesn't happen like that. Mm-hmm. Listen, I would tell people, no, you get grilled. You better have an attorney. You sit in a box and down in homicide, and they going through you from everything from the gear that you wear to how many bullets you have in your gun. Yep. And it better be right, because if that shooting doesn't match up with what you're supposed to have, those rounds, you get written up for that. A lot of people don't understand that. So that's kind of where the podcast started for me, and it was like just an informational thing. And when I started it, of course, I got a lot of, oh man, you're a sellout. You on this side. And I'm like, no. I'm like, folks, I've been there. Like, there's some bad officers that come to mind and bad events, and I call them out. But probably about 80 to 90% of the stuff that they show on social media is not the whole story.
Hmm.
You know that. It's not the
Yeah.
whole complete entire story. They show clips, right? So that's why I started with the training aspect. I was like, hold on, let me show this clip. And then, it went to, oh, well, they fired 9 shots. They should have fired. And I'm like, okay, you're a firearms expert, use of force? Well, I'm like, yeah, I understand, folks. It may not look
Hmm.
this way to you, because emotions get in it. I'm like, but police we aren't trained that way. So a lot of the show grew over that, and it's funny. I started with maybe 200 to 300 followers. I kid you not, over like 2 years ago. So now it's up over like 51,000,
Yeah, you're
which is
crushing it, man.
which is really cool, right? Because it was all kind of generic, where people just start following and asking questions. And a lot of my
Yeah.
coworkers, and I put out videos, and we don't work, and I'm like, yeah, we did this, and this is why we did it. So a lot of people want information. I just think our departments do a very poor job. Most departments do a poor job with the PIOs and telling folks what really happened, because it's like we have that cookie cutter approach of a public information officer who sits there and goes, "Yeah, the male was unconscious and the officer fired 2 shots," and that's it. And people sitting there like,
Hmm.
well, what happened? So
Yeah.
you want to be transparent, and we always hear that. We got BWCs. You want to be, our department's going to be transparent and whatever. But a lot of departments, to me, only want to be transparent to a degree.
Yeah. Yeah.
To a degree.
Yeah, you said
You
a
know what
lot, and
I'm
I wanna kind of rewind and bounce around a couple things. One is that the news does what the news does, and I had a recent episode recording, so I think they'll air really close. But look for Aaron with National Gratitude, right? He's a Navy vet, and now he's studying all this kind of narrative stuff and talking about the media and why is the media so negative? Why is technology like leading us down this way as a society? And it is like if it bleeds, it leads, right? And so they're a business and they're trying to do their thing. And I don't want to throw too much shade. Sometimes I'm saying there's some really good media executives, and I don't know about executives. I don't personally know any, right? But I'll say freelancers, I'll say journalists, I'll say people that are trying to do it the best way they can, but with integrity, showing the sides. But how they clip it, who knows, right? And so I appreciate that from the vein of transparency. When one, we as the police, like generally, and I know that emotions get involved, like whether it's like, hey, I want your badge number, or hey, what's your name, or hey, I'm recording you. Okay, we're recording ourselves. And at this day and age, we really all should, because why? We have nothing to hide, right? So you do your audit, you look at my body cam, what have you. And then, as you point out, let's look at the force science experts. Let's look at how human physiology works, right? The shows show somebody in my position shooting a gun out of a hand. Why is that unreasonable? Why is that actually irresponsible? Even if you could, all these things. Well, just tase them 8 times. Don't shoot them 1 time. It doesn't work that way. And just to share with some real talk, not in an abrasive way, but just to be like, if you want it, it's here. If you want to open up your mind, as we are trying to, like you and I, like talking literally about, okay, pick us apart. Like, let's be transparent, because that's what the community wants. Like, we were of the community of people in this country before either of us were cops. And one day we're going to not be cops anymore, right? So we should want this same teamness of like just safer streets, safer communities, right?
And again, a lot of my I don't know if you ever heard of this shooting, but it was Freddie Gray shooting in Baltimore. It's probably like 2015. Well, it was where Baltimore rioted, and they burned half the city down.
Mm.
And, it was Freddie Gray. It is Freddie, and I'm not knocking the man, the person, because he's deceased, but the whole story just took a life of its own, and you had people coming in to Baltimore at City Hall, just like making it a whole spectacle, right?
Yeah.
And come to find out, and you're like, okay, they arrested 4 police officers, 4 Baltimore City police officers. And I know this story like quite well, because my former co-host on the show, she actually investigated that case. Force detective, right? Use of
Hmm.
force detective. And I remember her saying to me, she's like, Kenny, they're going to charge these officers and they didn't do anything wrong. And I'm like, what do you mean they're going to charge? I'm looking at her because I'm like, man, she's like, no, they're going to charge them because the state's attorney wants them charged.
Mm.
I'm like, well, yeah. She's like, but there's no evidence. So a lot of people don't know, when there's a shooting, the detectives go down to, the morgue, and watch the autopsies,
Yep.
and they review it. And you have experts that say, no, this is what really happened. And people don't know that part of it, right? So a lot of decisions go into not charging police officers with stuff that don't come out until after a grand jury. And then even then, a lot of it don't come out because the families or whatever, like, all right, we'll settle for, wrongful death, but we don't want anything put out. Just give us that $5 million. And most cities will settle because it's a lot. And again, in the case of my shooting,
Mm-hmm.
I was told it was a lot cheaper to settle,
Yep.
and we will not admit any wrongdoing. And I'm like, I didn't do anything wrong. Yeah, we
Yep.
know that. But a lot of and you see this, right? So a lot of departments just go along with it. So what people think is, okay, every time police shoot somebody, they get sued, they were wrong. No, a lot of cities are just like, we're going to pay this toll because it's much cheaper than the hottest $300 an hour lawyer to defend you. And a lot of people don't, a lot of people don't get that, man. So that was a lot of my passion into it. And again, the Freddie Gray case started. And when those officers got found not guilty, the whole city was like, oh my God, but you told us something else. And we're
Mm-hmm.
sitting back saying, no, we were trying to tell you guys the truth, but you didn't want to listen because the untruth was more popular to say it was
Yeah.
racism. But no,
Mm-hmm.
wait, you got two black officers involved. Where's the
Doesn't
racism?
matter. Doesn't
Right?
matter, right? Mm-hmm.
right?
Like,
So that's where it
yeah.
started. That's where I really got into it, showing people this is what really happens when the police shoot somebody. You
Mm-hmm.
don't just walk away and go, yeah, I see y'all tomorrow morning. It doesn't work like that.
No.
So that was
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that passion for where it came from, but then also bits of your own experience, right? And so you highlighted earlier how you are treated like a criminal. Like, no mistake about it. Like, you are being investigated, oftentimes in another agency, people you don't know, right? And that is a cleaner way to do it, right? But we have to know how that feels, right? I was in a shooting, and I have a lot that I reflect on positively. I have the fact that I knew names and faces of some people that were taking the photos, because I worked K9 at the time. I was in K9, right? So you meet a lot of different people. I was on crowd control, so I met a lot of different people. I had that going for me in that comfort level. And I know, I mean, when someone pops out and shoots at one of the cops and then we all fire back, and I was not alone. And so I recognize that too. Like, that helped my, I suppose, confidence in the situation. But when I'm standing there and turn that way 90 degrees, turn that way 90 degrees, seeing all aspects of my uniform, my belt, they take your service pistol, they do the round count, and you're absolutely right. Like, okay, is it topped off? Is it always topped off? I was like, I think so. Like, what do you mean you think so? I was like, I'm not gonna, try to give a false statement by accident, right? So, and of course, I'm not saying all that because there are attorneys involved and there's guild involved, and because we got to be safe. And at the same time, like, I explained that in detail and going off of what you said, just to explain to folks that are unaware, and maybe they're cops that haven't been there, or they can kind of surmise, or they're civilians listening in. Like, it is not a great feeling, right? And it's not to be like, woe is us. It just is what it is in that aspect. But on top of that, like, you're talking about all these dynamics and all these narratives, right? All these agendas that people are trying to exercise. And I get it too, like, on the civil suit part, right? Like, not the OIS that I was in, but a different incident where the attorneys, I appreciate this. I was pretty new, but the attorneys brought it to me like this. They're like, you know what? You're a pretty polished young officer. You're college educated. You probably do well in front of a jury, but the city's incurred $100,000 at this point to this point, right, through depositions and all that. If we go to trial, we are going to incur at least another $100,000 just to try to prove a point if we do that, right? However, honestly, between like you and then the plaintiff, as it were, it's a flip of a coin. We don't really have a lot of evidence in this thing. Like, we trust you, you didn't do anything wrong, but they're going to pick at all these other things. And so we never really know what a jury's going to do. And so luckily it wasn't something that was like about my values or anything like that, or use of force, but I was like, yeah, I get it. Like, settle, do what you need to do. And they settled for less than 100 because it's a lot less money. And I get that. In some ways it's like a business. I also get, because I know people personally, that they settled on use of force related thing or death related thing, and it crushed them and it felt like betrayal, right? We talk about administrative or organizational betrayal. It felt like they did everything right, and meanwhile the department's like, we're going to pay them out. And every situation is different. And I'm not saying it's wrong because people pay out. I'm just saying it really can crush a person. And so I suppose the takeaway is like, we got to, as much as we can, we got to make sure we remember why we do this job and not take things so personally, even though it's almost impossible not to.
Yeah. My first shooting, you say crush. My first shooting crushed me
Mm,
because it was a 16-year-old. I didn't know he was 16. He's a
mm,
robbery suspect. Big dude.
yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm defending my part. Okay, the end of it, grand jury. I don't have to testify in front of grand jury. The attorney's like, no, testify. I'm like, okay, cool. I testify. I tell the truth. Grand jury is like 23-1. Good. I'm good to go. No
Mhm.
bill. You good to go. Also, I'm thinking, hey, I'm young. I'm like, yes, I did my job. I'm going back to work. They're like, no, no, slow down. I'm like, what do you mean? No, no. There's probably gonna be civil litigation,
Mhm.
and I'm like, so why can't I go back on the street if I'm clear? Homicide cleared me. What's the issue? They would never tell me, but it was basically like putting you on the bookshelf.
Yeah,
Just
we're gonna hide you for a little
we're
bit,
gonna
right?
just for a little bit. And I'm sitting in there, why if I did my job and I did everything and I'm clear. So
Yeah.
okay, so they sent me to communications. I learned how to be a dispatcher, right? I got that
My
skill, right?
goodness.
During this whole time, I'm angry. Because I'm sitting there like I did my job, put me back on the street. It
Mhm.
took them a whole year to say, all right, you can go back on the street. Just like that, one day, oh, your investigation's done, you good. And it's like, oh, well, it's really been done, but the chief wanted you basically on timeout.
Yeah.
So as a young, very young officer, that stays with you. Now I'm
Yeah.
already dealing with PTSD that I didn't know about, right? But that stays with you because you're like, my department, as you said, is like they just abandoned me
Mhm.
because I did everything they trained me to do, and then you just toss me aside
Yeah.
like I was nothing. All my hard work, all the guns I got off the street, everything just gone, right?
Yeah. How does
But
that
you
not
really had to
yeah.
adjust to that.
Yeah,
You
you
really
said
did.
timeout. How does that not feel like a punishment? And
It is.
what what could have been done differently to make that situation better?
More communication.
Mhm.
Again, the only person I talked to was maybe the FOP lawyer every now and then.
Mhm.
My coworkers were really good,
Yeah.
but from the top, the only time he called me was the day of the shooting. Right?
Yeah.
Not saying you have to baby me, right? Because I was a grown man, young
Mhm.
man, but it's like, hey, you did your job. And I know he couldn't say that back then, but it's like, hey, we're gonna put all the resources that nope, nope, no. It's like this is the process. That's all you ever hear. This is the
Mhm.
process. The process treats officers who really have been involved in OIS shooting just to me horribly, man, because you are looked at, it's almost like you're the enemy now. Because you brought not say shame to the department, but you brought an acknowledgement that you may have to use use of force. And chiefs of police and admin people don't like that. And I'm like, oh, this is what we do. This is
Mhm.
I didn't want to use force that morning. Are you kidding me? I'm thinking I'm just going to back up an officer on a robbery call. A normal, the simple robbery call that we don't
Yeah.
think is gonna turn in anything. Okay, cool. So I learned that you really have to um, step outside your department, get the necessary resources, and like build yourself back up because that first shooting almost destroyed me, man. Well, destroyed my relationship, my family, everything. Because my kid's mom back then, she couldn't deal
Mhm.
with it. She's like, I can't deal with it, and we broke up because of that. Second shooting was a little different. The department was like, hey, go play video games, and I was out for like 6 months. And I'm like angry at this point, but it's like, all right, now you're like, I'm a veteran, I'm getting paid for it. You flip it, and you're
You've
like,
been
okay,
there.
cool, right? But
Yeah.
the process is still, it's a horrible process for police officers to go through.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you sharing that, and I appreciate that response because it's kind of what I have in my mind of like what makes the difference. Like I've been on both ends, right? I've been off on leave, and I've had also in the interactions on the management side, right? So I've been peer support sergeant, which is a very different role, but very check-in, person focused. And then I've also been like just the administrator, right? And a couple of things I've heard from people through the years, especially even recently, just saying like, "Hey, I was out for a while, but just the fact that you and so were checking in meant a lot." Like just a simple text, right? And if people are worried about like, public disclosure requests, like there's a lot you can say without saying anything of like scrutiny when you're like, hey, just thinking about you. Call me if you need anything. Hey, thinking about you. I hope you're good. You don't have to say, I think your shoot is justified because even though I wasn't there and I didn't review the body
Right.
cam and anything. Like, of course not. Of course, don't say that. Don't write that email. But say like, hey, I'm glad you're okay. Like I'm truly am, right? There's a lot that goes there. So that is a shout out to, I know that there are senior leaders that listen in. That's super humbling, but it's also, there's a lot of new people coming in. You're going to be the future sergeants, the future command staff, the future chiefs and sheriffs out here. So remember this stuff, right? Remember how it feels. And there's just because of the breadth of who listens in, I like to remind people like there are things you can do because I feel disconnected frequently as an administrator, right? Like I'm at a desk. I make no mistake about it. But I realize a couple things. One is when I watch use of force, I know that I've not lost it when I see and I get tense. Like I know things are okay because I saw the guys in the hallway earlier, right? But I see it and I feel like, oh man, like that guy's reaching, right? Like how does this go down? I already know how it goes down, but I'm like glad they're okay. I'm like, okay, I haven't like lost my grip on things, and I need to do it more. And this is my public commitment to do it more. But like just showing up on a call, right? Taking an alarm call, backing someone up on a traffic stop, like keeping your streetness, as I've heard officers say. I like that, but it's just that awareness because I know I've been on calls as a commander, and I felt, at least I was looking around, I felt like I was maybe a little bit more vigilant than other people because I don't do it as often, right? So I'm like, okay, I'm not so out of touch. Like I don't know what it's like, and I don't know, that it's easier said than done to say, well, why didn't you use this force, then this force, and this force, and why didn't you say this word, then that word? Then it's complicated, it's stressful, it's highly dynamic. So I appreciate you sharing all that insight, man.
No, not a problem. Like I said, man, that's why I love podcasts like yours. It's a couple other breaking barriers.
Mm-hmm.
He's a pretty good friend of mine,
Oh,
and
nice.
we've been to lunch and we've talked about things, and we all have this kind of sense of the information is here if you want it,
Yeah.
right? And to somebody with an open mind, and I think one of the best things you can get is a message or a text message or from somebody to say, hey man, I heard your podcast or I looked at your show and I did not know that's how it happened. I appreciate you telling us this is how it happened. And you get those over the course of a year and you know you're making a difference, right?
Yeah.
You're making a huge difference. Really quick to your point of supervision, a lot of people forget when they were on the street, right? I know one, she's top dog now. She's assistant chief. We came on together. I love her dearly.
Mhm.
But sometimes I would say to her, hey, me and you used to sit in that corner and I used to watch your butt while you fell asleep overnight, right? And I'm
Yeah.
not saying a
Yeah.
dime, we all
No, no,
did that.
no.
I'm
That's
like,
that's the life.
come
Yeah.
on now, like
Yeah.
stop. You know
It's
what I
actually
mean?
a good idea. I'll
Well, I
say that,
mean,
like it's
yeah,
not
like
calling out. Yeah.
stop, right? It's like, come on now, like, or you would say, hey, I got to make a run. Can you take this call for me? I got you,
Hmm.
because that's what we do. But to me, a lot of management, it's a test taking thing, and it's who's the first one can get out of patrol after 2 years. Who's the first one can be a detective after 2 years? And that is a huge question. I tell people, like, I don't want to be a police. I want to be a detective. And I look at him like, say that part again. I'm like, you do understand you have to learn how to be a police before you can even think about being a detective.
Hmm.
I say, and it's really a lateral move, but you can't explain that to people because they watch Law and Order and everything, and they're like, they see the detectives walk up on the officers and like, hey, do this, do this, do. This. And then opposite, to be real, it's the officers who are the ones that write the damn homicide reports and turn them into,
Uh,
homicide. For them to look over and be like, oh, you know this guy? But TV doesn't portray it that way.
yeah.
So yeah, I just think now a lot of people, supervisors or new supervisors or people that want to be supervisors, man, you got to know why you really want to do it. And don't forget when you get there that used to be that car, sometimes maybe ducking them calls at 3 o'clock in the morning because you're like, oh, man, really? I got to go there again. So,
Yeah.
I just tell new sergeants and stuff to kind of like, don't forget that.
Yeah, it's a team, and I love how that, man, even just the aspect of specialized unit and like detectives, right? We all start as cops for a reason, and I was never a detective, but I can see, and I've heard it from many expert detectives, and I can see it from my vantage point. Like a lot of the best detectives are really, really good street cops, right? That
Mhm.
it all starts from that, and so what I hear is kind of the recognition of don't forget where you came from and keep that humility. And as leaders of all ranks and roles, we should remember like it's about helping people do the thing better, right? And so if we were thinking about supporting and helping or removing obstacles, right, and remembering what that's like. I mean, shoot, you have more and more agencies adapting a rest or recovery or a nap policy because would I prefer an officer trying to make do on 3.5, 4 hours of sleep because, crying baby in court and all these things? Would I prefer them call out sick and leave us short staffed, or would I prefer them have like a half hour, an hour to like literally get them some REM, get them some recovery so they're sharp in that critical moment? Or they don't run their car into a ditch, which also that's brass
Mhm.
tacks, that's injury, that's cost to the fleet. That's how is that not a more responsible, city or government decision to get people the support they need, just to take a knee for a moment, like just to hit the bench, right? And so all to say, I think they're all interrelated, and that's why we talk about it so much.
But you don't find normally you don't find those type of leaders because over the past, definitely over the past, what, since George Floyd, we had a
Hmm.
lot of leaders who were, and I don't even say leaders, they were supervisors, but they never were leaders.
Yeah, yeah,
To me they sacrificed the good of the department, the officers. Like we had officers, and I can say this. We had officers in D.C. where we were out there in squads, and they would say during that critical year, you know what I'm talking about, and
yeah.
all that
Hmm.
stuff, and they were having officers kneel,
Hmm.
and I'm sitting there like I'm not. First of all, it's a safety issue. Why in the hell you gonna have your very well trained CDU units kneel down in front of a violent crowd to prove what? We don't know. But again, there was that pressure during that time. No, you go ahead. We got it. No, 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 no. You go ahead and kneel. Because when you kneel and he crack you upside your head, I got it on body cam and I'm never gonna let you forget it. And then when I
Sure.
take you to the hospital, I'm gonna
Yeah.
joke you about it. But we had so-called supervisors that fell into that instead of saying, no, we're here to do what we're supposed to do. I'm going to look out for my whole line of officers. Nobody's here kneeling. You know what I mean? And we had administrators that fell into that. And to me, that was one of the most saddest moments in policing. It
Yeah.
really was,
That's hard, and I think that happened everywhere. It happened in my neck of the woods. I'll say, like, it was a contentious crowd, and then a group of officers elected to kneel, and a group of officers elected to not kneel. And I like that it wasn't like an order, like, hey guys, this is how we avoid the thing. We're all gonna walk out here, take your helmets off. No, no,
man.
no. Like, hopefully that wasn't happening in places. But all to say, like, I understand why some people did, and why they're like, hey, I'm gonna drive connection. It's probably subjective whether it was safe or not safe, depending on where you were, right? Like you
Okay.
were where you were, so you know.
Mm.
There, I've definitely been on the line many times where like, there's no way I'm taking this helmet off. There's no way I'm going to. But I've told this story too with me and my buddy where people were in our faces, not literally because we didn't allow that because safety, right? You see a lot of places where they're up in their face and they're spitting all that. Like we didn't play by those rules, luckily. However, there's a gal just screaming like you're a murderer and you'll do whatever, you'll do any unlawful order, and he literally just like instead of being like kind of like the royal guard, like stone face and no non-response, he was just like, no, I wouldn't. And she's like, oh, he speaks like, yeah, you would. And then he's like, I literally wouldn't. He's like, your boss would tell you what. And he's like, my boss is right here. And she points at me because I was a sergeant team leader. She's like, oh yeah, whatever, that's BS. And eventually he's just like, can I, like, listen, ma'am, like, can I get your first name, or just trying to talk. The rest of the crowd actually told her to shut the f up because they're like, hey, I actually want to hear him, because they were angry, they're frustrated, and they have their right. Like,
Right.
we are in this free nation, and they actually told her to shut up so that they could hear a cop talk. They
Oh,
wanted to see the human. So like, I love that story because he was way better at it than I am. I've gotten better. Like, I'm more open to that, but man, at the time, it just felt like everyone was losing. But the more we dig our heels and the more all that, like, really the crux of a lot of this conversation is just like trying to meet in the middle, and to the point of your whole platform, I even started just to put it out there. Like, no one's saying anyone needs to follow you or like trust you. Like, but I'm here. Here's the information as I see it or as I understand it from my context, my professional experience. Like, take it or leave it, right? And that's where I appreciate like Breaking Bears United. Like, I followed him for years and years, and very much the same. And
he's a cool, yeah, he's a cool guy, man.
yeah, I love it. You got to
Yeah,
connect us.
that
Yeah,
would be cool, man. Oh, that
yeah,
would
we'll
be
do a
cool.
panel or something. Yeah, but like my wife puts it, and a lot of it's my personality type, and she's doing a lot of reading on a certain aspect of this. But she's like, you're very invitational. Like, you don't like telling people what to do, but you'd like to like build something and say, hey, come along if you'd like. And I feel that from you, and I think that's what more of what we need. And one day, hopefully, more people are willing to just take a pause, check their ego, check their bias a little bit, and then just be aware. Like, okay, this may be another version that helps me better understand this thing. Because what is the goal? The goal is a community, right?
Gotta have communities, for us to exist, and the other way around. And most people want good law enforcement, but again, what we present them with is normally not the full version of why it happened, why we do it, and this is why this person is getting locked up. And I said, quickly, I always start with people when I go, hey, listen. you don't like the police, and give me why, whatever. And they'll give me a story, and a lot of times I break it down to them and say, this is why. And they go,
Mm,
well, man, when I got pulled over, it was three officers pulled up. And I'm like, yeah, that's normal. I was like,
mhm,
that's a normal backup thing. Or then somebody drives by and they'll yell to you, y'all don't need three officers for this one guy. And I'm like, well, ma'am, do you know he has a warrant for homicide? Right. And when you say that to people, they kind of get that moment. It's like, yeah, I said,
mm,
because we're so preconditioned for, again, TV shows, what social media says, the clips that social media give that don't give the whole entire truth. So when you gotta break it down to people like that, it's like, okay, or I'm trying to do a shoot no shoot thing. I'm trying to put that together for the spring. And I want to put people in the place of the police officers and go, all right, I'm 10 feet away. Now aim for my toe and tell me if you think you're gonna hit it. While I'm running towards you with this knife.
mhm.
When you put people in those situations, a lot of times they go, I didn't know. I
Yeah.
didn't know. You know what I mean? And they're more open to, the idea of, this is why. It's not always racism, it's not always police brutality, but this is why this certain situation occurred or might have occurred. So
Yeah.
I love doing that. I
Yeah,
love
I love that. And on that note, like we've seen videos, or if you haven't, like look it up. But there's reporters that have that gone into like a use of force simulator, and they come out like devastated that they shot the wrong person.
it.
And yeah, I've seen that, and I chuckled too. But I appreciate those reporters for putting themselves out there, and then also like just showing like, yeah, it's not that easy. And I'm not like, it's not to shame or blame, but it's like, hey, we are the ones that are trained, so like trust us to some degree. And even that like the traffic stop idea, there's a lot that a little goes a long way if you're just willing to talk to someone. Not just I'm not just saying be berated to no end, but if you're like, hey, like the guy's got a warrant and he's got a violent history, so like, and sometimes you don't want to share someone else's business, but even in that, like with a lot of de-escalation training, more cops are better for lower escalation, right? Because if I'm by myself, I might be jumpy, I might have limited options, I might have my pistol out, per training and context, right? But someone else could have a taser out and someone else could have hands free, right? Like, and so if you explain that in the right format to somebody, they might be like, oh, okay. Wait, more cops means less likelihood of force. You're like, oh, often so, yes. And if three of us put the grab somebody and wrestle him to cuffs, better than me, with a stick or a taser and just doing all these deployments because I'm by myself. I'm kind of strapped. This is a really big dude, very motivated, very high, whatever, right? So just like a little bit goes a long way when people are willing to listen. And even in that example, I think like the old school used to be, hey, why do you need all those cops? To be like, get out of here, none of your business, right? Like move
Right.
on or ignore it, which is the opposite of what you're trying to do, what I'm trying to do. So yeah, I mean, I really appreciate that. And I think we need more of it. And I think that you're leading the way in a lot of those respects. We don't talk about all the same things, but it intersects on this whole premise that we can get better. A little bit out, yeah, a little bit out of order, but I do want to ask for a lot of listeners, like, what brought you into law enforcement?
All right, so this is the exact reason I got it. I think I was 17, 18. So I grew up in a very mixed neighborhood in Baltimore, right?
Hmm.
Right on the Baltimore City County line. So my best friend was a white guy, right? We really we didn't, back in the 90s and stuff. Everything wasn't about race. You just had a friend who happened to be white, right?
Sure.
Or a
Yeah.
friend that happened to be Asian. All of us hung together, rode bikes and all that. For whatever reason, old guy at the end of the block, called the police because we were riding bikes at the end of the block. Some guys do. Like,
Hmm.
all right. So officer that responded is a white guy with a handlebar mustache. I never forget this. And he treated my friend, the white guy, he was white guy. He treated him like straight dirt, right? And it stuck with me because I'm like, well, wait a minute. He didn't do anything. We here, man. We kids just riding bikes.
Isn't that what you want
Right,
kids to do, right?
right. Like, what do you want? Because the neighbor doesn't want us riding the street. Nowadays we don't even take that call. But
No.
then, it did. So that was my crux of, nah, man, I'm gonna make a difference on this. I was like, I
Hmm.
think that's so bad. And then it's funny because that's when I said that thing stayed in my mind because I was like, if I ever get out there to be a police officer, this is never gonna happen. I'm going to treat people with respect and everything else. Now, again, I had my moments in my career where
Yes,
I'm like,
sir.
hey,
Yeah.
hey, good, right? But normally that it's as I've gotten much better over the years. I'm very cool on now. Like, okay, ma'am, okay, sir. Will you tell me what you want us as officers to do. And a lot of times people just want to talk. And you know
Yes.
that people just want to
Hmm.
talk, right? And then you listen to them, you're like, okay, well, I've been here 4 times. I've given you the tools. It's not much else the officers can do. Instead of, get the fuck down, sit down, like
Hmm.
you learn that over
Yeah,
time,
I've been there
from
too.
rookie to
Yeah,
convictor, right?
absolutely.
You
Hmm.
learn it over time.
Yeah,
Because like,
hopefully.
man, I'm not taking you to jail. It's 3 minutes before I get off. I'm not taking you to jail for you to be right back out in 5 minutes. How can I help you?
Mm.
90% of the time they just want to vent. And
Yes.
that's what took me a minute to get it. But once I got it, it made me a much better police officer. That was that moment where it was like, nah, I'm gonna be the police, man, because you're not supposed to be treating people like that.
Mm.
White cop on a white guy.
Yeah.
But he was my friend. So
Yeah.
that was my moment of truth, as I call it.
Yeah, we need that. Straight up, just like, how do you just show up better? Like, just be a nice, kind, serving servant person. I love that, man. Well, Kenny, I'm curious, where is all this going? Like, do you have a vision that you care to share? Like, you're building this awesome presence. Like, what's next? Or if you don't know, like, please just,
Consulting. Consulting.
yeah, okay,
I do that now part time. So I
nice.
got hired to do consulting. So I do, consulting on the side now. Listen, I was real close to maybe going to Florida and doing some things down there. And that still may work out at the end. But I would love to be a public information officer for a department because I'm not going to be your ordinary PIO. And I
Mm,
think that's probably is going to scare some departments off. Now, no, I'm not going to bash the department. I know
no,
what
no.
conduct unbecoming is. But I would be that guy. And that's what I'm aiming for. That PIO that's like, hey, listen, we've got 39 calls for service at this address. This is why the officers responded like this. We've recovered 3 guns out of this home. This young man has been arrested 22 times.
Yes, yes.
Sometimes you have to tell people, and
People want it.
that,
They want
right?
to
So
know.
this is why we got 5 police officers here, and this is why this incident happened. It's something like the police departments are so terrified of saying that, bro.
I
Of
think they're
telling.
just afraid. We're afraid, and we, police, government, or just people, like, we're afraid of change. We're afraid of doing something different. But where I get frustrated and I get dejected at times is when we, a society, get afraid of just acting, right? Because it's easier, it's safer, it's more comfortable to just like, well, it's how it was, and we don't need to say anything. They can say what they want. It's like, well, more and more PDs, more and more departments, and PIOs, civilian or sworn, or police leaders, sheriffs, and chiefs are going out there like, this is unacceptable. This person did this, this, and this. We arrested him for this, this, and this much damage. This person's hurt, and the judge released him. Like, that's what people need to hear. It's not like to
Right.
blast, but it's like you got to shine a light on the truth, because
Yep.
ultimately, when people see the streets are terrible and they're like, what are you doing about it? We're like, well, I'll tell
Right.
you what we're doing about it. And I'm not pointing fingers. I'm just letting you know what we're running our lap, and you need to be informed. It is your right to be informed.
Absolutely. You hit it on the nose, man, and that's it. So there, that's where I want to go. I filmed with Daytona Beach PD probably about a month ago. I went down there, and
Mm,
they have an outstanding chief, and he allowed me to film with, is it on Patrol Live, the TV show.
okay.
So I got to film with those
Yeah.
guys and do the podcast with him down there in his office,
Nice.
which was really cool, man, because he's a very progressive chief. And a lot of the ideas that me and you talking about, he has already implemented. So
Nice.
his department loves him. And I'm like, man, if not to say every chief, but it's something about law enforcement in Florida where they're a little different. Or, Georgia.
They're a little different as a
They're a little
state,
different, bro.
and some of that's good. Some of it's kind of
A lot
interesting.
of the police, but they usually have good leaders who stand up and say, "This is why we did this to this young man. It wasn't because we were out there looking to harm him. This young man shot at us. He shot at my deputies. They returned fire. What do you
Yeah.
want us to do?"
Yeah.
I think more people would love to, like,
Yeah.
okay, all right,
Yeah. Have you seen are you familiar with Chief Hodges at Bloomington, Minnesota? As you
no,
explained that, I've someone sent me his video. I have some buddies that work under his department now, but he's going to be coming on the show. And I just want to
okay,
talk about, his leadership philosophy, and, showing up for the community, but in this not disparaging, but just in a real talk way. That's not that common. And I think maybe we're seeing more of it. And hopefully the more people do it, the water's fine. And other leaders are going to feel emboldened and empowered to, not go off the rails, but just say what needs to be said.
Maybe you said.
And so, yeah, I'm excited for that. And I'm hopeful. I appreciate so much your time, your sharing on
No problem.
personally, professionally, your other pursuits as you're trying to just kind of bridge all that. And so keep doing what you're doing, man. I'm super glad we're connected. I'm very proud to be able to share your story, a little bit of it.
Okay. Thank you, man. I appreciate you having me come on. Like I said, it's been time in the making. I'm glad. And yeah, bro, I appreciate it. You have an open invitation to my show anytime.
Thank you, man. Yeah, please tell the listeners, and it will be in the show notes, but where they can find you and your other stuff.
Okay, my Instagram is Let's Talk Law Enforcement, period. My TikTok is the same title, Let's Talk Law Enforcement. And the podcast can be found on Spotify, Amazon, what's the other? iHeart and Odyssey. I think there's one more, but those four,
Fantastic.
You should be able to find, what you're looking for out of those.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's on those. Give us a listen, man, and give us some feedback, and we appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
All right. Thank you, man. Have a good one.
Hey, Grit Nation. I got a couple things I'm really excited to share with you. The first is that the free newsletter, is now live. All you got to do is go to bluegritwellness.com to subscribe. It is basically a summary of everything good and gritty for the week, including some exclusive content specifically on the newsletter. That'll include wellness information, nutrition, things that you ask, Q&A, as well as updates about Blue Grit, offerings, news, things that'll help you out. Next order of business. For years, I've been asked what kind of nutritional supplements I use because I've been into learning about health, nutrition, fitness for so long. And for years, I landed on NutriCost. And it's only a recent thing that I've been an affiliate, but now I get to pass the savings on to you. So if you go to NutriCost.com, use code BlueGrit, that's just BlueGrit, you get 10% off. Literally just a couple items, you get free shipping. And the reason why I found it was because it was always the best quality for the best value. So I always recommend people look at the ingredient list, look out for things like sucralose. It has the lowest amount of unnatural ingredients if you're looking for that kind of thing, whether it's your whey protein isolate, which I toggle on and off of, or organic vegan protein to cut down on different chemicals that I just generally like to avoid. It's not just protein, it's creatine and minerals, vitamins, things like L-theanine and magnesium, which I use regularly to help my nervous system power down. It aids rest and recovery, promoting better sleep. So whatever it is, go to NutriCost.com and you can just enter the code BlueGrit to get your 10% off. Thank you for tuning into another episode of Blue Grit Radio. As always, support this community by subscribing, giving us a 5-star review, and following, liking, and sharing posts on Blue Grit Wellness on Instagram. You can reach me there or email me at bluegritwellness@gmail.com. Be well and stay gritty.